Welcome to another episode of Legion Elite Motorsports. I'm your host Isaiah, and on today's episode we're going to check out the differences between non-turbo and turbo block for G54B. So let's dive in. Okay, first I definitely want to get started with introducing the blocks. So this is a non-turbo block, and this is a turbo block. So we're gonna start with each side, front and the top, and see the visual differences. So, since this one's turbo, we can start with this one. This is one that we're more familiar with, more accustomed to. So, here are the valleys for oil. This is the pickup for a non-turbo setup, and then the pickup for the turbo setup comes off the actual pump, and this part is blocked off. So basically this pretty much looks the same across the board on both of them, but I am noticing that this has a half moon piece here because the actual tube boss is bigger, I would assume, or stiffer. And you can see this one's here just more precise on the cut. Even on this hole here, it's more precise on the non-turbo, which is kind of weird. Doesn't make any vast improvements, but what we're gonna also see is this hole here. This is the upper balancer shaft cover, and you have to have the solid ring in there when you eliminate it. See, so there's no holes in this ring. You see the galleys, and then the galleys lead to this area here. And yep, that's pretty much about it. So what you could do there is pop your cover on and no big deal. But if you look at this one, it's completely sealed. Does not have the option of taking it off at all. And then on the inside, of course, that's sealed and everything. So that's one very important difference. So that's that on the face. So let's turn these to the side and see what else differences we have. Okay, so let's take a deep look at what we're looking at here when it pertains to the exhaust side of the block. So on the turbo one, we have a sandwich plate that goes on here and actually has an adapter, technically, that goes for the oil cooler, the oil feed to the turbo, and there's like a thermostatic piece on this side. So that's that. And then on this one, it's direct filter. There's none of that. So you see, this is where you bolt the sandwich plate down. There's no bolt for that one. Then you can see here, this is where you can put a dipstick, and this non-turbo has the dipstick right in that spot. Okay, and then this area here is actually supposed to have a little Allen key block off. This is where you prime the engine so it doesn't run dry when you crank it up. And someone put a oil pressure sensor here instead, avoiding the sandwich plate, because the sandwich plate actually comes with a oil pressure sensor at the bottom of that. So they kind of did it backwards, but that's fine. And then this one comes with the oil pressure sensor right there because it doesn't have that sandwich plate adapter. Okay, and then there's like some subtle things that don't mean too much, but the cast the casting of these two G54B blocks are completely different. Okay, so for instance, you see Roll Smooth here, right? We have an extra nugget right here. Okay, and then you see here, Roll Smooth around each cylinders, right? Here we have some sort of reinforcing here, making it stronger, which kind of leads me to believe that the diesel versions of these engines, which of course handle a lot more abuse, have structural reinforcement to improve the strength, you know, of it being turbo diesel. This is just a non-turbo motor, but interesting nonetheless. And then here, we don't have any of that. It's all smooth, round, see? From here to here. Reinforcing, no reinforcing. Now, this stuff is small potatoes, technically, but you can tell even more difference near the top. So we have this nugget here, which, you know, we're accustomed to. This one's thicker and shaped differently. You see, this is to a point. This one carries a curve. And then also, even at the deck, so right here at the deck, it's smooth for the turbo application. For the non-turbo, it has these ridges. Even at the deck, which we're gonna get to that soon, it has an extra plateau along the whole thing, which is very strange. As you could see, all of this missing material here is all filled out right here with some extra embossing and stuff like that. This block also just came from the machine shop. It got hot tanked and brand new freeze plugs. So that's good there. But yeah, so we're gonna get to the other side. Let's see some more differences. Okay, starting off with the turbo engine. Now visually, there's not too much a difference on this side versus the non-turbo, but very, very minuscule differences, small. So as you look here, you see they look pretty much the same minus the sealed cap here. These here are pretty much the same right there. And then we have this eliminated on the non-turbo. Then we have this area here shaped a little differently for the non-turbo, and that's pretty much about it. Like this piece here is solid. Simple stuff, but nothing too, you know, drastic. I mean, this actual piece here is thicker on the non-turbo, as you can see there. It kind of contours with this whole piece. So from here down to there is thicker on the non-turbo, which again, I'm not too sure that these minor differences are going to make that big of a difference in strength, but it is a difference, and it does make some sort of a difference. So again, at the top, smooth all the way across, and then this one has some embossing, make it a little bit stiffer, I assume, on the top. Very, very reminiscent of a diesel style improvements, because this is where the bolts anchor down to, just in this area. So if you follow this down, the head bolts are in these areas. So more material. I assume this could keep it from cracking, possibly, don't know, but very interesting. And then since we have them on their side, let's check out the bottom. So on the bottom, We have the oil pickup. They're the same on both, but we don't use this for turbo applications. You should, especially if you have ARP main bolts like these, because your pickup tube coming from the front actually bolts to these main bolts, and the stock bolts are smaller and the pickup tube won't work unless you modify it. But if you modify the oil pump to pick up from this hole here, which you see goes all the way over here to this hole, and then you get your new pickup tube that bolts in with the regular gasket and 2 bolts, and it lands in the same stock area, that'll be easier to run ARP mains. So that's what we're going to be doing for this block in particular, but the non-turbo actually comes like that from the factory. So another thing I'm noticing too is the girdle style. This one seems a little bit more stronger, kind of, sort of. As for this one is all V style. So all of them have a V shape. And yeah. So that's some more subtle differences. And there's like a little bit of embossing over here on this one. But again, shouldn't make too big of a difference. Yep. And that's it for the bottom. And last but not least, we're gonna check out the top. Okay, last but not least, we got the top. This one's been freshly machined, and we're more accustomed to this, straight to the point. You got your water and oil ports, no big deal. Now this one hasn't been machined yet, but you could see the embossing around these areas. Nice subtle differences. You could see flat to the embossing areas. So to kind of sum everything up, you can use either block for boost. They both come with forged cranks. Only difference on the non-turbo is, at least immediate, is the oil cooling and sandwich plate on the back side. The dipstick, which doesn't go to the oil pan, because this one goes to the oil pan. But you can cap that off or leave it there, change your manifold or whatever, and run boost on this one too. Now the factory setup is still forged connecting rods, but it's flat top pistons, which I believe I have the pistons to this block, and I'll give you guys a quick look at the non-turbo pistons and rods. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so as you can see, the actual rod looks technically identical to the turbo rod, forged, no differences, but the piston is different. So flat top, notch points to the front of the engine, and yeah, so this bumps up the compression ratio from the turbo standard version at 7.3 something to 1 to 9.8 to 1, or 9.7, somewhere in that area. And if you chose to run this type of piston with your turbo application, you will notice a quicker boost response. You'll notice more peppiness, more performance. But these stock pistons will only hold 12 pounds of boost max reliably before they explode, put it like that. So if you went aftermarket pistons with the setup, it'll be a better, safer bet. But yeah, so this is the piston to non-turbo. And of course, the most important part, you see these holes here, those are for piston coolers. It's actually a jet that sprays oil on the back of the piston to keep it cool. The non-turbo one does not have that. Let's take a look at the non-turbo. And as you can see there, no piston coolers at all. And just so you know, when you're running forged pistons, which are aluminum, you don't technically need piston coolers unless you're doing an endurance racing or something of that standard. Other than that, not really needed. And with that being said, we're going to call it an episode there. Hope you guys found it interesting to see some subtle differences between non-turbo and turbo. But yeah, if this is the type of thing you like to watch, definitely consider subscribing, hitting that bell icon for updated notifications. And until then, I will see you guys next time. And remember, knowledge is power.